But
Yeah.
anyway, at some point, you're booking for your own bands, and you're extremely successful at it. And this catches the eye of other artists, of course, because they want to be booked as well. So when they see, oh man, this is band over here that's always busy. What's their secret? And they find out about Clif Doyal. He's like this booking extraordinaire. So now all of a sudden, you start booking a bunch of other bands as well, right?
Yeah, I started working with well, by the time I was done, before I actually launched an official booking agency, I think I was working with about 10 bands.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't charging them anything. I was just opening doors and helping them get into the circuit that I had built up, which was all over Oklahoma, North Texas, southern Kansas, Southwest Missouri, just in that area of the country in the Midwest. Um, and one of those bands that I was helping was Toby Keith.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in a band, and was my band, and we were breaking up and parting ways. And I already had a couple guys coming in to take care of the guys that were leaving. And I remember the singer in the band, when we were done with our last show, he said, you ought to think about being a booking agent. You're helping all these acts. You should really think about being a booking agent. And I remember looking straight at him and going, now, Mike, what the hell would I want to do that for? I said, I've never worked with a good booking agent. They've all been kind of snaky. And I work for some of the biggest snaky ones out there that people that are listening may remember, and I won't name any names, but I remember thinking, how crazy is that? I have no interest in that. And I remember waking up the next morning. I remember standing in the bathroom, looking at the mirror, and just talking to myself almost and going, maybe it's not so far fetched. Maybe you can do this and do it right and be honest and be straightforward and do it with integrity and do it with honesty. And
And
I
compassion.
decided,
We talked about that
I,
earlier. So
and the passion.
compassionate. Yeah, so
And
compassionate.
I decided that that was what I was going to do. And so in 1984, I launched a booking agency out of my bedroom in Norman, Oklahoma, called Clif Doyal Entertainment. And I remember I made my own logo out of this, little design things that you could buy, and it had a star where the I is in my name, and I mean, I got business cards made and put out my shingle, man, and started smiling and dialing.
Just an incredible transition in your life and something that served you well for sure. One thing I did want to talk to you about because you have a unique perspective in this field, I think. You have booked four bands and you have been a talent buyer for venues as well. You've worn both of those hats over the course of your life. I'm curious which one you found to be easier.
Well, the talent buying is a little more straightforward because you're dealing with a venue and a talent buyer, and I'm going around to the national agencies. I started actually booking for national recording artists not long after I officially launched my booking agency, because I was getting calls I started getting calls from people in Nashville and from venues going, we'd really like to book some acts. And it's funny you mentioned Gene Watson. Uh, Gene Watson and Paik McIntyre.
Wow.
Paik is Reba McIntyre's brother.
Yep.
He had a very short-lived record deal career, and the first two shows I booked was him, Paik McIntyre, and Gene Watson. And Gene Watson was as big a star as I had ever,
Yep.
known. And so to be able to put my name alongside his it was just so exciting.
Yep.
And so I grew from that. That was in Ada, Oklahoma, and I was playing almost all the clubs I was booking into originally with national acts. I was also playing those with my band. And so, before long, the agents are calling me, and I've worked with Well, over the course of my talent buying career, I worked with just about every national act that you can think of, including a few that are out there now. I think probably the newest artist that I booked while I was still a talent buyer was Rascal Flatts.
Wow.
But I enjoyed that end of the business, and I used to book about probably anywhere from 20 to 30 shows a year.
Mm.
And before I got done, I was talent buying for venues in Oklahoma, venues in Texas, venues in Missouri. It just grew kind of like the agency did. It just grew to where I was working, and I really enjoyed that because I would basically I'd go to the major agents. I would see who they had available and what their asking price was and what the routing dates were. And then I would go to the venue and I would try to keep my eye on things that I felt like was going to break. So, for example, the first time I booked Travis Tritt, I had some insider information from the record label because they were on the same label as Little Texas. And the first show I booked for Travis Tritt, I bought way in advance. And the week his show played, his song was number one on the radio.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. Just you have
And
to.
his price was four times as much as we paid for him.
Right.
And I
This
did that
timing.
many times over. I would keep my eyes on acts and I would just bet on them and go, this act is going to break. This act is going to break. You need to get on board now and buy this act. And almost always I was right about it.
So as you're growing within the booking field, you know you're booking four bands, you're buying talent for venues. How much did your reputation as a booker for the bands help you in convincing other artists to play at a venue that you're buying talent for, or did it at all?
You mean, did it affect the national agents I was buying talent
Yeah,
from?
did it help you get an
Yeah,
artist that maybe you wouldn't
yeah.
ordinarily have a shot at?
Yes, it did because a lot of times when I would contact the buyer or something, they would say, "Hey, we've already heard your name."
Mm-hmm.
That I would contact the booking agent. We've already heard your name. Your act, Lance Griffith, for example, he's playing several venues where we book, and we hear your name associated with his, and then we know that you're working with Toby Keith or whatever, and yes, it did help me because they knew that I had a good reputation. They had probably had talked to the buyer about me, or maybe not, but they knew that I knew what I was doing, and they respected the artist that I was working with developing. And they would say, when we play in your market, we want this band to open the show because we've heard great things about this band, and they will put butts in the seats as a support act for our national. And so, yes, it did help me. It cross-pollinated and helped me. Uh, Both helped the other.
Yeah, just an amazing perspective that you have over the business.